threatening to disrupt the global trade economy. And joining me now to talk about all of it is Republican strategist and former aide to President George W. Bush, Denise Gitsham. Thank you so much for joining us today. Always glad to have you on the program. You know, tariffs are Trump's favorite economic weapon. We've been talking about this, right, Denise? So are you expecting a major breakthrough from these negotiations today in Switzerland? We're on a new day. We've got a new plate in front of us. How do you see it?
You know what I think we need to do is we need to reconsider what a breakthrough really is. You know, I expect de-escalation, not a grand deal. I think that some tariffs will be done away with, but it's not going to be an overarching deal, which requires a lot of relationship building and rebuilding. I expect a lot more symbolism than substance, honestly. These are considered ice-breaking talks, and I think that they just need to signal a willingness to negotiate again. I think there'll be some concessions. You know, I think there's probably going to be targeted tariff relief. And I think that overall what it is it's going to be a sigh of relief that both sides are going to feel that we can reengage and sort of melt the iciness between us, because, you know, there's no reason for the two of us to be locked in forever conversations about what we want to do trade. We're inextricably intertwined when it comes to trade, and it benefits both sides to come to a much better deal.
I also wanted to ask you to listen to a piece of sound with us. We want to play you this back and forth when Secretary Bessent testified amid the ongoing trade war, another big topic. Let's listen.
If the exporters, they dislike tariffs so much, why wouldn't they, if, I think what you're trying to get me to say—
Did you remember the question? I'm not sure you did. Who pays tariffs?
It's a very complicated question.
And you say it's a complicated issue. It's not complicated. Consumers pay Trump's tariff tax.
All right. So what do you think, Denise? Is he the right guy to do these negotiations?
I feel really sorry for him. When you're on the hot seat like that, you know, and you're asked a direct questions, I'm a lawyer. And so when you ask a direct question, you just want an answer, yes or no, or who is it? It's hard to explain everything that a tariff is. And we all know it's far more complicated than that. Look, I think Secretary Bessent has done a fabulous job. I mean, he speaks with such authority, and he has so much authority based on his experience that, of course, you know, this is factual. When you have tariffs, prices go up. Everyone knows that, you know, and the question is, what is the long-term implications of continuing to have low prices at what cost? And I think that's the bigger conversation that everyone wants to look narrowly at, what's going to happen in the near term. But the question is, if we continue on this path for the future, what are the implications going to be, not only for ourselves, but our children and our children's children? We cannot sustain what we're doing now. And what Americans did in November is they elected a president that was going to change everything about how things were done and hopefully stop this downward slide and the growing deficit and all the things we owe to other countries, because we haven't had a comprehensive solution to our trade deficits. And so, you know, we've got a lot of work to do, and I think there is going to be pain in the near term, and that's what they're talking about.
Well, how long could this go on, though? How long do we expect it to go on?
Who knows, right? Like, I wish I was God and I had some insight into this. You know, I think you'd make a lot of money if you were a betting person and you had that kind of insight. I think the question is really like, well, I think what it is it feels like we're on an upward trajectory in the sense that—
we'll take that.
Yeah, no, any little incremental, you know, upward trajectory is good. Step, you know, is in the right direction. But, you know, the question is, what are we willing to settle for at what point as Americans? Because if we don't reset this relationship with China, and again, we allow it to continue down the path it's been, it's simply unsustainable, even if we avoid a lot of pain in the near term.
You know, we're also taking a look at another big meeting, Xi Jinping and Putin meeting in Moscow earlier this week. So when we take a look at these two together, how concerned are you about those two superpowers strengthening their relationship, it appears, and on the impact that it might have as U.S. and Trump tackles this tariff war that's going on right now? How do you see it?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's under any illusion that the two of them are actual friends of ours. They're more like frenemies, right? Like, we have to play nice with them because we're all superpowers, but we all know that they would love nothing more than to bring down the West because they want to be the superpower. And so, you know, I think it's upsetting anytime you see your enemies conspiring, and obviously that's what they're doing. They're talking about what they can do to strengthen themselves and each other, because I think the enemy of my enemy, even if they're not enemies, is my friend, right? They have a shared interest in seeing America come down and them step up. So I don't like it. That's the bottom line. I don't like it either.
I was going to ask you, do you think that Trump should trust Putin? And obviously, you know, the answer is probably no, but I mean, just a little bit. Is there any kind of trust that he can build with Putin on this matter?
Diplomacy is such an interesting thing because if you trust anyone in the world of diplomacy, just in any realm of politics, including in Washington, D.C., then you're really just a fool, right? That's why they say in Washington, if you want a friend, get a dog. You know, it's the same thing internationally. It's all politics. And so I just think that as long as we understand that we have strategic interests, and that's why it's so important what we did with Ukraine and establishing a common strategic interest, like we need their rare earth minerals, they need us to support them. Those are strengthening our national security for the long term and doing much more to ensure peace than any sort of, you know, like words, honestly. Like economic interests tied together. That's why you see China and America coming to the table. There's no reason for us to continue escalating tensions. We have a mutual interest, and that's what's going to keep us at peace.
All right, Denise Gitsham, thank you so much. We'll see more people in Washington maybe getting puppies this year. We'll see how that goes. Thank you very much.
Idea.
Yeah, right?
Thanks, Laura.
Good to see you. We'll talk again soon.